Set Phasers, a highly illogical Star Trek podcast.
Hello, my friend.
Hello, my friend.
Hello. Coming to you live on a Sunday.
Yes, because
We're
the world is not always what you want it to be.
indeed. Well, happy weekend to you.
And happy weekend to you.
Oh,
And happy weekend to you, listener and viewers. You are watching / listening to Set Phasers, a highly illogical Star Trek podcast, where we talk about Star Trek, where we talk about Star Trek Discovery, how much we love it, all the great things about it, and also we have been discussing live, or at least weekly, the new season 3 of Star Trek Discovery, which has only had 2 episodes so far, and they are great. We're very excited to discuss them. So today's star date for the episode is stardate 31025.5, and we will be discussing episode 2 of season 3, entitled Far From Home.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And so many questions. But anyway, shall we
Yes.
get into the rundown?
Let's run it down.
Let's run it down.
It's time to run it down.
Can you run it down for me? Can you run it down for me?
Run it down.
We're gonna run it down. We're doing this. I'm gonna keep it quick. Here's how everything that happened in episode 2 of season 3. So first thing you gotta know is the episode 1 followed Michael. Episode 2, which kind of makes sense, follows basically Discovery, the ship, and the crew as they come through the time wormhole. And we discover at the end that they come through, like, because of how temporal distortion works or whatever. It's been a year since Michael showed up, even though they were right behind her.
Yep.
So it's Discovery going through the wormhole, and they're all passed out, and they're all whatever, and then Saru comes to, and the crew comes through, and they wake up, and they enter normal space, and they're in the middle of like a debris field again, and the ship is all screwed up because it was in a huge fight with Control when they left the time that they came from, and so they're like flying through debris, and then the ship is not really functioning, and they enter the atmosphere of this planet that they don't know anything about, and Detmer, who's at the controls, basically has to, with the help of her crewmates, do like a controlled landing, and the ship basically crash lands into some rocky, icy terrain. And actually, I think of note is that Detmer kind of goes flying over the desk, and then for the rest of the episode, she's kind of like in a bit of a weird headspace, even though she gets checked out by the doctor and doesn't
I
have a
want to talk
concussion.
more about that.
We
Yeah.
do need to discuss it because I have a couple theories or thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
So the deal with Discovery is once they've landed, all the power is out, the comms unit is broken, the EPS grid is all jacked up, so they can't leave, they can't communicate and try to find Michael, and so everything is kind of in disarray. Saru, who's the acting captain, basically says, okay, here's what we're going to do. No one's going out into this unknown planet. We're going to fix the ship first and foremost, because once we fix the ship, then we can find Michael and we can figure out what time we're in and did everything work out. Tilly does run some scans and finds out that there is a settlement, so there is life, and so they celebrate over the fact that their gambit to beat Control won, because there's still living beings in the galaxy. But there is a motorcycle outside of my apartment. I feel like it's idling. I feel like it's gonna. I just don't trust it. I just feel like it's just gonna again. Okay.
There
Like
it is.
that.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
That's a hairdryer. That's not a motorcycle.
You're right. Well, I'm
That's
glad
like
that they must have
125.
stopped at the stop sign out there. Okay, so Saru's in charge, but Giorgio is there, who, former evil emperor version from the mirror universe of Giorgio.
I love. P.S. I love her in this episode.
She's
Love
great in this
her.
episode, and this is like the Giorgio we've been waiting for. Well, the Giorgio we
Yes.
know and love, and also don't know and don't love. I
She
don't know.
doesn't feel as tethered. I feel she's just like sort of going, oh well, I'm in a new time. It doesn't
That's like
matter.
her thing, right?
Yeah.
Because well, so she shows up with like blood and guts all over her. And they're like, "Are you okay?" And she's like, "Yeah, someone had to take care of Leland." So she basically she must have stomped him to death. That's what it seems like because he's all over her shoes. Uh, and she's sort of like, "Why are we fixing the ship? We need to get out there and figure out what's going on because if they're hostile people, they want to take us on." So Saru has to sort of assert control, and he does that by basically saying like, once they find out that their comms unit is not just in need of repair, it's in need of a complete rebuild, and they need a certain materials to do that, which does seem to be in this settlement that they found. Uh, he says, okay, he's going to go with Tilly, not with Giorgio or Nan, to meet these future people and to try and barter with them or trade, a la the Federation, honorable code. Uh, and so he and Tilly set out for the settlement. That's kind of our A plot line. The B plot line is Paul Stamets, who was sort of like head. Is he head engineer or head scientist? It's hard to describe what his job is on that ship because Jet is really head engineer, sort of.
There's a power play between them. They
Yes,
seem
which
pretty
is
equal, but
delightful.
you're not quite sure.
Yeah. So he was put in a coma because he got impaled during the battle trying to make the Red Angel suit for Michael. He has to be woken up by Hugh, his partner, because they need the beds for people who are more seriously injured after the ship crash landed. And he's been told, like, hey, take it easy. We're going to put you in this cellular regeneration chamber, but don't go crazy. Hugh, like, is threatening him, like, don't go crazy because I will hurt you. And he goes, okay. But then he completely ignores that and he goes right back to work, even though he's in severe pain and his wound is not completely healed. Also, Jet Reno, everyone's favorite character. I don't know if it's everyone's favorite, but I'm loving the hell out of her. She like hurt her back in the crash landing. So she's got a toolbox that also doubles as a chair, which I thought was a great touch. And she and Stamets have to work together, even though they have sort of they're like frenemies, I guess. A friendly enmity.
fair.
They both don't take each other's shit, basically, is I guess the best way to put it. But that's sort of that non-buddy experience is happening at the same time. So back to the main storyline. Saru and Tilly follow a stranger who's sort of like beckoning them on, and they wind up ending up in this weird saloon establishment, basically, which I thought was so like deliberate. The mood,
Yeah.
right? It was like they even had the swinging doors of the saloon.
There was a lot of commentary about it being very similar to Firefly with
They
that
had
look.
a very big firefly. I was going to mention that as well.
Yeah.
So essentially, they get there and they meet some untrusting strangers who are the people who live there, who are the miners, who are living under this new situation in the galaxy, which is dilithium is a hot commodity, very hard to find, and their ships are warp capable, but they have no dilithium, and they are in thrall. Basically, they are under the thumb of a courier who is the only person who will take the stuff that they mine and bring it to the exchange. And I assume basically the courier charges them an exorbitant fee and apparently also killed their former courier. And so this courier, what's his name? I wrote it down. Zella?
Cal? Oh, I've forgotten. Oh, the bad guy. I forgot his name. I think you only get
The
it
bad guy.
once.
Yeah. Well, they say, Zara. Zara will have tracked them. Yes, they meet Cal, who's one of the miners, who actually does repair their comms unit with, now we have a word for this weird stuff that can turn into other stuff. It's called reprogrammable matter. Yeah, whatever. And Saru and Tilly are trying to like keep a low profile, but also find out what's going on because obviously it's been basically 1,000 years. But as they are there with the miners who are a bit jumpy and tell them the whole thing about Zara shows up. And basically,
With spurs on his boots.
he's got spurs on his boots and he's got his posse with him. They come through the door and they're all, yeah, they got guns. They got these laser rifles or whatever. And well, actually, they wind up shooting Cal essentially because Cal stands up for Saru and Tilly, and then he basically tries to extort dilithium from Discovery through Tilly and Saru by sending Tilly back. Now, there's a C plot line, and that is that where Discovery landed on this planet, um, there's this ice that apparently is a parasitic ice that grows in the dark. Like when it gets dark, the ice grows exponentially and crushes everything it finds. It's a parasite. And so that's growing around the ship. And so the sun is setting and the ice is crushing the ship, and they're trying to repair the ship before the ice crushes it, all that stuff. So now Zara's idea is to send Tilly back to get this dilithium that he and Saru have agreed upon and bring it back while they hold Saru hostage. While that's happening, though, Giorgio shows up because obviously she will not follow orders. She walks into the bar, which is like she's even more badass than Zara, and she starts talking a good game. She's kind of turning Zara's men against him by being like, he hasn't told you that he doesn't really have it in the bag either. Anyway, Zara takes objection to this, attacks her. She lets it happen for a while to get him into good position, and then Saru and Giorgio, but mostly Giorgio, handle Zara and like his 3 henchmen. She kills like all 3 of them pretty much.
Oh yeah.
And then Saru stops her from killing Zara. Basically, he's like, even though he may be a blight and obviously is a horrible person, and he even after he's been granted his reprieve by Saru, who has to stand off with Giorgio, and it gets very tense. And Saru says the miners will decide what to do with you. Even in that moment, he threatens that he will come back and like kill the miners and their children and slowly kill them and have them starve to death and all this punitive stuff. But essentially, they're able to, with Giorgio's help, because Giorgio is into this kind of stuff, get rid of Zara, send him out into the ice alone instead of killing him outright. And then they give Saru a personal transporter, which is the cool new tech of this age. And they're able to beam back to the ship with their repaired thing. They use the repaired comms. While that's been happening, Stamets and Reno have been working together, even though Reno's trying to convince Stamets that he should just lie down. But Stamets is too stubborn to do so. So he climbs into a Jeffries tube, and the ship is being crushed and being shaken about. And so he gets injured. His injury re-injures, and he's bleeding all over in the Jeffries tube, even though he's at the conduit that he's fixing. And Culber is called because he's the head doctor. And Reno is able to talk. I mean, come on. The same, what did you call it? Hair dryer motor? Yeah. Reno's able to talk Stamets through the repair, and so they fix the power grid, which means that now the ship is able to get their engine stuff back, impulse and thrust, and the comms are fixed, so they would generally be able to communicate with people. But all these things are sort of rebooting and repowering as the ice is covering the ship now because the sun has set, and so they're trying to pull out of the ice as the ice is trying to cover it, and it seems like it's not going super well, and shields are getting jacked up, and they're having to reroute power, and all this is happening. And then a ship shows up on their sensors, and the ship captures them in a tractor beam and pulls them out of the ice. And who is it on the ship when they are hailed? It's Michael.
Dun,
And
dun,
she says,
dun.
It's been a year, but I finally found you. And so now the story of Discovery will continue in the future. And that, I think, is the rundown.
Woohoo.
Yeah, we did it. Toss. Okay, so
This is the new format of the rundown.
the new form of the rundown where I try to crush it in like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
But now we can discuss like all these things. So let's start with Detmer, because that's sort of the first thing that happens, even though it's like not a main plot line, but 3 or 4 times we see that she's really out of it.
We're given such a hint that something is wrong with Detmer.
Yeah. But is it because of the crash, or what is it?
No, so as the episode starts, you get the, what happened last time in Star Trek Discovery, and then you see that moment of Leland falling and like control and the metal bits kind of falling out of him. And then when, we start on Discovery again, and everything's quiet, and everyone seems a bit dead, and everyone's kind of waking up, and you see that scene of Saru,
Yeah.
and then there's things are bouncing, and you see this sort of metal, sort of powdery type thing bouncing, and I'm like,
Mm.
are we given that hint that that's some sort of control thing? Are we not rid of control? Is that
Oh,
something? So I'm
well, because
thinking,
yeah,
is the Detmer thing related to like control, and somehow it's in Detmer?
right, because she has the bionics implant,
Yeah.
the same way that Arium was sort of taken over by control,
Yes.
but she's less fully bionic or less totally bionic than Arium was. That's a good question. I wasn't sure if that was what was going on. Um, she does crack a smile at the very end of the episode when they see Michael. So there's some middle ground here with Detmer, but it's a kind of a mystery, and it's never really. It's like a loose end
Yeah.
that they kind of want us to keep pulling at. Um,
Because when she leaves sickbay, and there's that whole moment of Culver looking back at her as
yeah,
she's walking out, and you're like, there's something not right here.
yeah,
We're not
yeah.
sure what it is.
Hmm.
But one to watch.
One to watch. Keep an eye on Detmer because something's going on there. Something beneath the surface. So yeah, let's talk about this whole Wild West thing.
What did you think? Let's go with you first.
Well, I thought it was a fun way to introduce the same concepts as the first episode. But you know what? I actually have, the more I think about it, the less beef I have with it because it is a little out of character for Discovery, which is usually so serial, but it is very classic Star Trek kind of plot. Like away team, two people show up, have to
True.
deal with some tough and like get things to work out. And there is the added into the mix, Giorgio shows up. And so it does have a little bit of a Discovery thing, but it's very on the nose because like even when they show up in the saloon and push the
With the
doors
double
open,
doors,
the double
double
doors, they walk
swinging
in.
doors.
The only thing that was missing was somebody playing like dinga danga dinga 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 piano in the corner and then stopping or whatever.
Yeah.
Like the bartender's even cleaning a mug behind the bar and then like picks up a little the hand rifle things. It was a little goofy.
It's a little
Um
over the top. And I think, like, for me, if they hadn't done the spurs, I
yeah.
might have been okay with it. But the spurs and some of the sound design was a little,
Yes.
deliberate in
It was
in
very
that respect.
very on the nose there. I do think it's worth it was a way for them to underscore that this is not your old Federation or your old Star Trek. Like there's no overarching Federation reprisals. This really is the quote Wild West. Like these couriers basically own the people for whom they curry because everything is ruled by the exchange, which is like the place where civilization is still ruled by maybe by laws. We don't know enough about the exchange and everything, but out here on the outskirts, these miners are taken advantage of, and their ships are not work capable, so they're unable to provide for themselves. Uh, and I think it's cool that that kind of scarcity is something that the Star Trek has never had to deal with writ large. The closest thing that comes to that is like Voyager, where they're like the ship itself is in undiscovered country and they meet new civilizations each week and stuff. But that's sort of writ small because it's like it's the ship that they're running out of dilithium and they need to find water or they need to find food or whatever. Here, it seems like the whole galaxy is under this kind of awful situation where if you're not able to scrape by with some sort of commodity to give to a courier, to give to the power that be in the exchange, then your life is basically forfeit. So I'm wondering, that sort of seems like part of what this Discovery and possibly the Federation will have to come up against in this series. So I thought that was interesting. There's no
I guess
noble authority.
because commodities are scarce, and
Yeah.
therefore there's going to be trade, such as
Yeah. There's a whole
capitalism.
Yeah, there's scarce dilithium because of the burn, I guess. And also the subspace is all jacked up for 2 light years, so it's like hard to communicate via subspace. I don't know, that's interesting. Um my I I love the programmable matter. I feel like that's going to come. That's going to be
Well,
important.
yeah, it will come back. I
Yeah.
just like everything with Discovery, there's always a purpose to something.
Mhm.
And I was just like, what on earth was the purpose of adding spurs? To me, that was just, I couldn't really get behind that.
I feel like that was meant to be an affectation. They swung for the fences on Zara, the character, I think,
Mm,
and maybe it, like, went a little overboard. That's my feeling.
mm-hmm.
Like, if he hadn't had spurs, you would have been like, "Oh, I love this Wild West send up." But then he shows up and he's like,
Right.
if he had like spit in a spittoon or something, it would have made sense. But he is meant to be this, like, because he's not like Book the courier, or even the courier that wanted to kill Book in the first episode. He's a courier, but he also has like a crew of toughs that walk around with him, and he's like, check the perimeter. So he's carved out this little fiefdom for himself as the courier. Uh, I just feel like we're gonna run into other small, like, petty kings and queens like that in the series
Mm-hmm.
as it continues to figure out what's going on with the galaxy here. Um, so I don't know. Hopefully there won't be more like literal cowboys.
Space Cowboys.
But the another topic it brings up is like, what is the goal gonna be for Discovery? Like, what they're, I guess in the first episode, it's like we're gonna bring Starfleet back. You know, they hang up the
Mm-hmm.
flag, and Michael says, "I'm gonna help you bring Starfleet back," but we have to figure out what's going on with the burn. Like,
Yeah.
why did the burn happen? That's a mystery. And like you said, nothing is extraneous in Discovery. Like, everything has some ties into usually some sort of unified meaning. So I'm curious about the burn, because
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't seem like something that would have naturally happened. It seems like a plot maybe. But oh yeah, and the other thing about Zara is that he does say literally, like, the burn was the best thing that ever happened for me. So obviously the burn has to do with why the situation is what it is.
Yeah.
Uh, However cool the programmable matter and the singing space druid with hot abs and a glowing forehead in Book is, and it's cute cat. There's something weird there. Also, the Gorn and the subspace thing is weird.
Yep.
We don't know
We've
why
yet,
that happened.
yeah, we've yet to see the Gorn.
Yeah. And then the biggest question of all, or the, for us watching now, is like, what's up with Earth? What's going on?
Don't know. Well, we only get that glimpse at the very end where we got the preview of the next episode.
Oh yeah. That's
That's
right.
the only time we like they're going to go to Earth, and then we get some sort of like robot glimpse, and you're like, oh, has Earth been taken over by robots?
Well, they do have those
Which
weird
is-
drones in
Yes,
the credits.
You're right. It does look like a drone from the credits.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
I don't know.
But did
this
you
is gonna be
notice? So
cool.
when they were coming in to land on the planet,
Yeah.
that has no name. I think they just called it the colony, and we know
Yes.
so we know it's not Hema, and we know it's not Terra Elysium, so it's
Yeah.
this different planet. Did you notice like the giant crater?
I did. Yeah.
And I was like, was that burn related?
Yeah, I'm curious because also remember, yeah, that seems like it was, because Tilly does say, like, there are pockets in the on the planet that are like hexagonal shaped or something, like
Decagons. I wrote that
yeah, of
down.
course, because that's three-dimensional. Um, where there's more oxygen than there is on the planet. So like the surface itself is pretty blasted. Like, they have to go to the doctor to get altered so that they can breathe the atmosphere. And also that's why I feel like the saloon thing happened, because they have to go to Cave Mouth to get transported up into the colonies that are above the surface, actually. So I don't know. It's curious. Yes, I feel like the burn has to be involved, because dilithium was probably being processed everywhere. It's part of warp. So that's interesting. I'm also curious about this quantum slipstream business from the first episode.
I'm sure we'll hear more about that.
Yeah. And of course, I'm curious about Book and why can he talk to plants and animals? Okay, and I have one final thought.
Okay.
Although it was kind of given away in the next time I realized. But my question was, watching the episode, like, is Giorgio going to stay in the band? Because, like you said, she's untethered, and she doesn't seem to mind being untethered when she's in the ship with the elevator, the turbo lift. When she gets on the lift with Nan, she's like, I like jumping from universe to universe. She's into it.
Mm.
So I'm curious why she would stay in Starfleet.
I feel like eventually she would leave, but she's so drawn to Michael
You're right. You're right.
that
I
I'm
mean, it's
like,
the obvious
that'll,
thing.
yeah. But I feel like you're right. At some point, I feel like she might leave once, you know, Michael's okay and everything.
Yeah.
Like, maybe at the end of the season, I don't know, but
Yeah, I
because
mean,
what
look
else
at
is
this,
her?
like, just this one episode. Like, she could give her a ship
Hmm.
and one of those lasers, and she'll be the emperor in like a year's time again. She's,
Yeah. What was her? I have to ask because I didn't really get this. What was her fascination with Linus? Because
oh, I've had two thoughts about that.
okay,
One, we know that Giorgio is sort of just like into experiences, romantic and otherwise, right?
mm.
Uh, and two, I think maybe she was using him as an excuse to get away.
But what did she? Because I think it was only when he said it was his vision that he had 72 different types of
Yeah,
perspectives or something. I forget what
yeah.
it was.
It was
She
like
was like,
his.
"Oh, that's interesting," and then she walked him off arm in arm, and I thought, "What on earth is that about?" Like, what
I
did?
thought initially I was like, it's got to be a sex thing, right?
Uh,
But then I thought, well, it didn't come to pass because I thought maybe she was going to use him to help her see something or something like that. Like she
mm,
had some inkling of how that might be useful. Maybe that will come to pass. I don't know. But I really thought that was the only reason she did that was so that she could get out from under Nan's supervision. Because then she tells Nan she's going to deck 8 with Linus.
yeah.
And then when Nan shows up and asks Reno, like, hey, Giorgio was supposed to come down here and help. And she's like, Giorgio, help? What are you, crazy?
Hmm.
You really thought that? Uh, more good people being high on drugs acting, especially by Tignataro, who is on painkillers.
Yep.
She's great. What does she call Stamets? Bobcat?
Bobcat. Yeah.
She says, well done, Bobcat.
Bobcat.
Uh, yeah. And Hugh goes, Bobcat? She goes, I don't know, I'm on drugs.
Mm. She has
She's
some
good.
great lines.
She has some great lines. What does she
Hmm.
say? I wrote down the guy's name who she forgot. Oh, Gene.
Jean.
Yeah. Who's
My
like
name's
cleaning
Jean.
the slop. I already forgot that.
Yep.
Uh, yeah, she's great. I really feel like um, Tignataro could be a regular,
I hope
you
so.
know, that would be really awesome. But I know there's still some character we have yet to meet in the season, so we'll see.
Okay. So we've covered the saloon. We've
Yes.
covered a little bit of Giorgio.
Yep.
So what else? What were some of your other big points that you took away?
Well, apart from the Detmer thing,
Mm.
which I agree with you, maybe means that control is not completely gone, and they may have brought control into the future, which is terrifying.
Mm.
Uh, I think that there's something interesting about this whole like long range sensors have been gone for decades, so no one really knows what's going on outside of each sector. That wasn't me.
That's me.
Yeah. So no one really knows what's going on outside of their sector. So I'm curious if don't you think there has to be some authority somewhere? It can't all just be the exchange. Like there has to be some kingpin, some
Space police?
emperor, some space police or something. Because it's right now, if we're going with the Wild West comparison, it's just lawless, you know.
Yeah. And how long
But
ago was the burn? I forget.
all we were told was like 150, 200 years ago. Books just says before he was even born.
Oh,
A couple
so that's
hundred
quite
years
a
ago, I
long
guess.
time for lawlessness
Yeah.
and no organization or architecture structure.
You think something would have
Mm.
arisen. But I do think it's interesting that everyone knows about the Federation still. It's not like it's gone. Because when they show up to meet the miners, Cal's like, these are the Federation people. They're going to help us because that's how they're made. Like it's like the Federation has become like a myth or
Legend.
like legend. Yeah.
Mm.
So there's still some Federation around, right? Oh yeah, and book says like I've seen people like you in all the ports, and they're people who it's all about the ideals. They're
Mm.
idealists. So I think there's going to be an interesting clash slash communion when Discovery meets other elements of Starfleet slash the Federation out there. Right now, we've only met the one communications person who seemed just really happy to meet anybody. But if there are Federation
Yeah.
ships and there's some sort of hierarchy, they're gonna want to know why Discovery showed up from the past and what the
Yeah.
deal is. And that was all supposed to be kept hush hush.
Mm-hmm.
So I
It
don't
was
know.
never in any official records.
Yeah,
It's curious.
yeah. So I don't know. I think we have an interesting season headed. I mean, as usual, it's been a while since we haven't known what we were talking about.
Yeah, there's
But
no Trek tropes. We're
yeah,
just blank canvas right now.
yeah. There was one red alert.
There was one alert.
Yeah. But I feel like every season of the last two, we don't really know what's going on by the second episode. We usually are given more questions, and I think this
Yeah.
is no different. We
Because
yeah.
it almost feels like we're starting again. Like there's
Yeah.
no context at all with this season.
Yeah.
It's just all brand new. Because even when it was Discovery, we're like, okay, we know this is pre-Kirk, and we know kind of what to expect with the technology. We have some sort of idea. And, some of it's new in the way that it's presented. Some of the characters are new, and then how they tie in, with old characters like
Right.
Michael and Spock and all of that. But now this is just brand new. There's no context. There's nothing.
Yeah.
So we are exploring strange new worlds.
It's a strange. Yes, I wrote in my notes that this is like it's not a reboot of the original series, but it has that total unknown quality that people would have had when the first Star Trek came out, when there was no canon.
Right.
There was no like this is how everything goes. Like Vulcans were new. We had no idea what Spock's deal was,
Yeah.
So in a certain way, I think it's very adventurous, and I appreciate that they've like decided let's get away from you might run into an old Picard here or something like that. There's none of that crossover potentiality. This is a brand new story set 1,000 years forward from anything else we've ever seen, and I think it's going to be great.
I'm excited.
Yeah. Well, do you have any quotable moments? I
I
think I
have
wrote.
lots of quotable moments.
Do
Should we
you?
do quotable moments?
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's go to quotable moments.
Quotable moments. All right. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, I gotta find my quote. Oh, here we are. Yes, I really liked when Reno says to Stamets when she's trying to convince him to relax and that he can admit that he's in pain. She says, "Helpless is a shitty feeling, but it's not forever, and it doesn't make you any less capable."
I wrote that down too.
Did you? I thought that
I
was
did,
great.
yeah.
I'll use that for myself.
Good for you. Good one.
What else you got?
I had Culver's, which was, I need to get you out of there alive so I can kill you.
Yep, that was
Which I
great.
thought was sweet. And one that I did like, which was sort of less Star Trekky, but much more kind of, in the moment, was bureaucracy is where fun goes to die.
Oh yeah,
from
Giorgio. Yes, it was fantastic, and it's a great
Adapt.
way to show that's her perspective. Even as an emperor,
Yeah.
she was not into bureaucracy. The only other thing I had was I loved the scene between Saru and Tilly when they're walking towards the settlement at first, and Tilly's sort of wondering why Saru picked her as opposed to one of the more badass people, and he says, "I need an engineer," and she says, "You got plenty of engineers. Giorgio's an engineer," and then he says, "We are introducing ourselves to the future, and you, Ensign Tilly, are a wonderful first impression."
Yeah.
So,
That was a sweet moment.
I thought that was really sweet. Immediately followed up by a stranger in the distance.
Yes. There was one thing that I realized or noticed, which was when Saru and Tilly enter the bar, and Saru says, "Greetings, we mean no harm," and not, "We come in peace."
Yes.
And I thought that was an interesting switch, and I was like, I wonder why they did that.
Right. Well, that's an interesting. Yes. Well, you do remember the very first episode of
Well,
the
exactly.
first season. Yeah.
But that's the tagline. So why would
Yeah.
you change the tagline unless you're sort of, I don't know, potentially trying to get away from the Klingon element of Discovery, or I don't know, Saru's. It's a notable maybe it's nota bene, this is not the Star Trek you've known before.
I think that's part of it. And I guess Saru is also trying to keep a low profile. It comes out that they're from the past because Zara was able to get readings off of their graviton particles or whatever the what. But they were trying to kind of play it as like, yeah, we're Federation and we crash landed and we need you to fix our comms, but we're just friendly neighborhood Starfleet. I don't know. That was an interesting choice. We'll see. I'm sure it will all will be more confusing and then all will be explained.
Indeed.
I also thought it was interesting that this episode was titled Far From Home and not That Hope Is You Part 2, as we discussed.
Yes.
So I'm wondering if That Hope Is You Part 2 is coming later in the season.
I feel like they've already titled out the episodes and we haven't seen it. So
well, that's
perhaps
great.
It's
because I don't know what's next.
Season after, who knows?
But that was would be a great end, right?
True. In some of the Star Trek groups, that was a conversation, and I was like, oh, no one had a good answer for that, really.
If I were them, I would make it the season finale. It would be That Hope Is You Part 2.
Indeed. That is a good one.
I'm just a big nerd. I'm going to now Google what the next episode is, so you might want to play. You can Google that.
Oh, good one. Oops.
If you want to know, you can Google that.
But where can I find that? I'm sorry. I don't know why I got so excited of my own
Your own Googling Star Trek
thing,
Discovery.
but I'm just excited to find out what the next episode is going to be.
Okay.
Season
Episode
3.
3.
I got it. Season 3, episode 3 will be called
People of Earth.
and
Let us
directed
feel your
by.
thunder. Is it Frakesy?
It's Frakesy.
Yay!
Everybody's favorite Frakesy.
Love a good Frakes.
No, you're right. I'm looking at the rest of the titles, and there's no That Hope Is You Part 2.
Oh, I do some nerd Googling of my own,
Yeah, of course you do.
Yeah.
That's why you're,
Why we're friends.
that's why we're friends. All right. Well, another mystery. The mysteries are both in the show and meta.
Yeah. Goodness.
So let's see. Oh, maybe there's I don't know. I'm not going to speculate.
All right. Shall we next time it? Let's throw it forward.
Let's next time it.
Next time on Set Phasers.
All right. Well, next time on Set Phasers, we'll be reviewing episode 3 of season 3, which, as we just discussed, is called People of Earth, and it's directed by Jonathan Frakes, and I'm sure it will be a delight. But otherwise, thank you for joining us tonight on a irregular Sunday. Normally, if you like the program or want to hear more about us, you can catch us every Friday at 8 o'clock Eastern Time on Facebook Live, or as a podcast whenever you like, wherever podcasts come from. And if you do find a podcast, please rate and subscribe it. That's how we get more people listening to the show.
Yeah, and tell your friends. We would love for you to share the podcast far and wide.
Yes.
Like Aki said, so more people know about us. Of course, we are on Facebook and Instagram as well at Set Phasers Podcast, so feel free to follow us there and join in the conversation of all things Trek.
Mm-hmm. And if you want to support us on our continuing mission to discover what Discovery has in store for us, and we have no idea what that will be, we would only be delighted. So you can patronize us, we can take it, by going to patreon.com/setphasers.
And you could get yourself one of these rather attractive mugs here with our mugs on them.
Yes.
Anyway, got carried away with that, sorry. Until next time, I'm Steph Mans.
And I'm Aki Burmese, and this has been Set Phasers, a highly illogical Star Trek podcast.
Computer. End program.